Serious? What's the creepiest, scariest thing you've seen but no one believes you? Just after high school, maybe 6 months or so after 9/11, I was a van driver who drove the meals for Meals on Wheels to the place where they get packaged up and taken for home delivery. Anyway, the delivery van only had AM/FM radio and I was listening to 92.5 FM. When all of a sudden the station cuts out and a transmission that I can only describe as an American version of a number station began playing. It was seemingly random numbers followed by a long period of the same phrase repeated over and over again. The phrase was "they took the crosstown bus," over and over again. None of the other drivers heard it, but man was it creepy to hear. Eventually the regular radio station came back on and they never mentioned anything about it. I woke up to something. It sounded like a door shutting. At first I thought it was a dream because I could hear it in the dream as I was waking up. Kinda like when someone calls your name when you're dreaming. But then I looked at my cat. His hair was completely standing up and he was beaming at my bedroom door. This was the moment when I got really scared because I know animals can pick up on that shit and I thought he might know something's wrong. My cat doesn't do this type of thing unless a dog is in the room. So I looked over at the door and the only way I can describe it is it looked like it was swaying, slowly, like it was breathing, like someone was standing on the other side of it trying to hear if I was awake. This swaying was accompanied by a shadow. I don't mean a supernatural shadow, but it looked like the shadow of a person behind the door. I was paralyzed in fear. I lay there for 5 minutes naked watching this door away. I considered yelling and trying to scare them away, but I was terrified someone might respond. I legitimately thought this was the moment where I will have to defend myself or be killed. I don't own a gun, but after 10 minutes or so I mustered up the courage to check every room in the house. I ducking checked every corner too. But there was no one there. I don't know what happened, but my evolutionary traits kicked in and I completely believed someone was outside my door. Edit. The accompanied by a shadow part was not a shadow figure. It was like the shadow you'd see if something was on the other side of a cracked door. I don't know if that makes the story less scary or what, but just wanted to be clear. I saw a panther-sized black cat darting out of a water retention artificial forest near a school in the desert. Logically, it shouldn't be able to survive there, but holy it, I saw it. Animal control wouldn't let that exist. There isn't really food enough for it, and the summers get dangerously hot if you've got black fur. Must have been 4-5 feet long. It doesn't make sense, but I 100% saw it, and so did the friend I was with. Not quite sure how young I was at the time, but it was probably between 5 to 8. I was in my babysitter bed at the time in her trailer park. It was 3 AM. I had woken up because I had to pee. When I woke up I looked down the hallway to see my babysitter leaning against the wall like one of the stereotypical cool guys do in movies. And I made eye contact and I felt my body go cold because she was still sound asleep next to me in bed. I went under the blankets trying to hide, and when I looked back she was gone. I didn't want to sound crazy, so I've never told anyone. I just sat in her bed watching infomercials until 6 AM when she woke up. Never even thought about sleeping there again. I honestly forget how much this affected me until I started writing this. Really freaked me out, man. Edit. Since I never told anyone, I don't know if it belongs here, but no one in my family believes in ghosts, so if I were to tell them I guarantee it'd be dismissed. I used to have a buddy that lived in the same neighborhood, a few streets over. One night we were having a couple of beers in his backyard while playing cards. I had some things to do the next morning, so just before 10 I said my goodbyes and shoved off. It was a short walk, maybe 15 minutes door to door, so I never drove. Anyway, it was a nice night, uneventful trip. But when I got home, my roommate was coming out the front door, coffee in hand, and dressed for work. He gave me a funny look and said he thought I was asleep since my truck was in the driveway. I told him where I'd been and asked why he was going into work at night. That's when he kind of laughed and asked if I was drunk. We stared at each other for a minute and then he told me it was just after 5 in the morning and he was going in just like he usually did. In my entire life, I'd never felt more confused than I did in that moment. I could tell he was dead serious, but I knew I had just left my friend's house. I checked my phone and sure enough, 5 something in the AM. My roommate left for work. I paced circles in the living room for a bit, then called the friend whose house I'd just left. He groggily answered and confirmed I'd left at 10 the previous evening. I have no idea what happened during those 7 hours of my life, and it gives me chills to think about it all these years later. I wasn't drunk. I wasn't tired. No one could have slipped anything in either of the turquoise lights I'd had. No known medical conditions that would have caused me to black out. And nothing has happened like it since. I just don't know what happened to that time. I was walking to class from the dining hall on my campus when I saw a lady yelling for help and banging on a window of a nearby building. Lots of people were walking past, but I was the only one who seemed to acknowledge it. I went to the window to help, and she told me she was locked in a room in the building and that she needed me to come in and open the door. Now, I have no idea the layout of this building and where she was located. So I decided to call campus security for help, despite her pleading with me not to call them and to just let her out. I call them, and when I hear them coming I go to greet them so I can take them to the window. I leave for maybe a maximum of 15 seconds, and when I return with campus security she is gone. We can't see her at the window, and campus security goes inside to double check, and sure enough there is no trace of her. Campus security definitely thought I was crazy, and I'm sure my professor thought I was full of shit when I explained to him why I was late. No one seems to believe me that this happened, but I swear it did. Frequently asked questions. I am female. It is a very old campus with lots of random historic buildings that people don't really use, and this building was one of them. The area has a very high crime rate, so it probably was a robbery. Not really creepy or scary, but my parents went canoeing in the middle of nowhere with some troubled youth. While they were on the river, their canoes capsized and people were having problems swimming and getting to shore. About 3-4 large men came out of nowhere and helped them all to shore, then completely disappeared afterwards. My parents swear they must have been angels, as there's no way they appeared and disappeared that quickly when they were in the middle of nowhere. Not sure if it counts as creepy or overall scary, but it was weird. Back in high school I lived in a large apartment complex. It was maybe around 8-9 at night and completely dark. I was with a group of friends, 4 or 5 people. We were just talking and messing around with a friend's pair of walkie-talkies as we decided to look up in the sky as 2 fireballs, or what can be described as fireballs, just appear in the sky and slowly move in a line. Just as that happened, we started getting what sounded like military communication over said walkie-talkies that was really static, but words came in every now and then. About 10 or so minutes later the fireballs disappeared and the communication cut out. There was absolutely nothing about this on the news the next morning, and no one ever believed me. A few years ago I was driving to student teaching down the central coast of California early one morning, and the radio started going staticky, and then a bright green fireball went across the sky. It was awesome looking. So I believe you. Footsteps and banging in my attic. For about 2 months, almost every night I would hear from my attic. The steps are only like 5 feet from my room. Small taps or footsteps. Then it gradually got louder to the point it sounded like an audible foot was pressing on the wood. I told my dad and he told me it was probably an animal that got up there or something. Thing is, my sister had it too, as her bedroom was in the same hallway as mine. My dad might have been right, as it was completely gone after 2-3 months, and right now at 2 AM, I don't hear it. And I swear to God, if I hear it after I post this, I'm actually gonna piss my pants. Had my laptop in my bed just before going to sleep, not plugged in, on battery. Made an offhand comment on some website about how I wasn't scared of ghosts and didn't believe in them. Then I turned it off and went to sleep with the laptop beside me in my bed. Next morning when I try to power it on, nothing happens. But the laptop feels unusually light. That's when I realized the battery had been physically removed and placed in the kitchen. I was alone in my apartment and do not have a history of sleepwalking at all. Disgruntled ghost carrying your battery to the kitchen. I'll teach him not to believe in ghosts. That's all for today's video. Hope you guys liked it. If you liked the video, subscribe. If you want to support the channel, the best thing you can do is simply watch the videos. But if you really want to see the channel thrive, subscribe, like, comment, add to favorites, add to playlist, and share with friends. Don't forget to follow me on Instagram at Reddit and Insta. Thank you guys so much, and I will see you with tomorrow's upload.